Welcome to another episode of Preparing for the Unexpected, brought to you by Stone Road. I'm your host, Alex Fullick, and as always, we talk about things related to supply chains, business continuity, resilience, risk, anything that can help you, your organization, or your community prepare for, respond to, and overcome adverse situations. Today, I'm going to jump straight into our topic today. You may recognize my guest. It's his fourth time back, believe it or not. Willy Fabritius. Willy, welcome back to the show.
Alex, no, thank you, and thanks for having me. It's a real privilege to be on your show as now a fourth repeat offender, so to speak. I really like the show because it's crisp, to the point, giving the audience a great quick overview, and then helps them to navigate the changes that are happening in the environment. So once again, thank you very much for having me back.
It's a pleasure to have you here. And you just said what I'm going to do, jump right into things. Let's jump into something you've been a big involved with in the last couple of days. BCI and SGS sponsored a report, Supply Chain Resilience for 2023. And you were a big part of that.
Yes, indeed. So SGS is very, very proud to have sponsored this supply chain resilience report from the BCI, the Business Continuity Institute out of the UK. And I really would like to take the opportunity to thank Rachel, Elliot, and her team for this wonderful report. I know Rachel already for I don't know how many years, seems like ages. And she and I have worked on a couple of reports in the past. And therefore, when the opportunity came about, of course, it was a no-brainer. We will do that. And this supply chain resilience report is really a very important piece of work the BCI is putting out every single year. And yes, SGS is a very proud sponsor. So please allow me to tell the audience also a little bit about the BCI, because I need to assume that some of the audience members do not know the BCI. The BCI is a non-for-profit organization founded in 1994. They have about 9,000 members globally in more than 100 countries, and offers a wide variety and spectrum of training courses and certifications for business continuity professionals. So if anybody in the audience is interested to learn more about the BCI, by all means, please go to thebci.org. And you will find a lot of information this non-for-profit organization is providing.
I am a member and have my certification, and my dues are due, actually. So I'm glad you mentioned that. Now, you work with SGS, and you helped bring all this together. So I want to jump right into the report. Just tell us about it. What were some of the big findings, the things that just kind of blew your mind?
Sure, absolutely. But before I do that, please allow me also, a couple of seconds talking about SGS.
Sure.
SGS is a Swiss-based company based in Geneva, and the company's name is French. And sorry, I don't speak French, so I will butcher it, and I apologize already for the French native speakers. It's something along the line, Société Générale Surveillance. And SGS is the world's largest test inspection certification company. So we are testing, inspecting, certify anything and everything you can imagine. And we originally started actually as a food inspection authority, grain inspection authority, transporting or inspecting grain being transported from France to England. And today we have about 6.5 billion Swiss francs revenue annually and 96,000 people in, 2,000 offices, laboratories around the globe. So I'm obviously coming from that domain that we call knowledge, which is related to certification of management systems. Among others, that includes 22301 and 27001. But coming back to your question in the first place, the report is quite interesting, or the results of the report is actually quite interesting, because honestly, I was a little bit confused in terms of the answers we got. I mean, one of the answers one of the questions was, what kind of tools are you using? And the overwhelming majority of organizations is using Excel. And it's something like, really? I mean, don't get me wrong. I use Excel myself every single day for various issues, but that is the primary tool to assess the resilience of your supply chain. That's pretty interesting.
That was one of the
frankly,
ones that jumped out for me. I was like, really? You
Yeah.
and I have talked in previous episodes about different tools and things like that. And then you have the report come out and it's back to Excel. Excel is king, I think, is the quote that comes out of the report.
Yes, and I sort of kind of understand it, but it's also a little bit mind-boggling, I must admit, because let's face it, how in the world are you able to, aggregate all the informations that are coming in terms of news feeds and information that is pertinent to assessing supply chain risks? And I think in previous episodes, we were talking about that in the company I was working at the time, when COVID broke out, we knew about COVID breaking out in December. And in January, we were on high alert because our friends in China had already issues. So by the time it then hit Europe and the Americas later on in the year, March, April timeframe, it was something like, yeah, okay, we are prepared. And this is the key in terms of really having your ears on the ground, listening to the drumbeat, so to speak, what's going on, and then assess that as a potential impact to your supply chain. Mm-hmm. And sorry, Excel doesn't do that very well. But
was there any indication why Excel is still being used?
I think it has something to do with management, sort of kind of understanding the implications of supply chain risks, but not providing necessarily yet the resources. And that was another important finding. People are still struggling in terms of interdisciplinary approach, sitting in their cubicles, but not really integrated in the entire business, firefighting rather than proactive. But at the same time, we see a significant improvement in management commitment to the importance of supply chain. And my reaction was literally raising my hands and say, finally, glory, hallelujah. But that said, it reminded me a little bit to, at the beginning of my career, I was in quality auditing, quality management system auditing, so ISO 9001, right? And everybody said, quality is important, quality is important. Yeah, but then when a field failure happened or a reject happened, it was the quality manager's fault. So I'm like, just hold on, that person did not design or manufacture or ship the product, nor did he or she put the product into the wrong box or attach the wrong label. But still, it was that person's fault. And I think we are at that junction right now in terms of supply chain security. Everybody says supply chain security and resilience is important and imperative. But we are still pointing to that one person in that cubicle that is responsible. No, it's everybody's responsible. Within an organization, we really need to have a multidisciplinary approach to assess our potential impacts and then prevent it from cascading.
What else stood out for you? I know before we started, there were a few things that I pointed out, but I'm going to let you say what you want to say before I jump in.
The reporting was an interesting thing. The cross-enterprise coordination of disruption reporting is at its highest level. And interesting enough, there is a very nice graph in the report that shows a continuous increase. And it started in 2013 with about 25% corporate-wide reporting, and then gradually increased every single year to now 36%, which is still not at the level I would have expected. But at the same time, hey, at least there's gradually improvement over the last 9 years. I would have expected a little bit more, but it is what it is. Then you and I also spoke about already the interesting divergence or differences between what impacted us in the last 12 months versus what we think will impact us going forward. And interesting enough, 46.8% of organizations thought that in the last 12 months, the main cause for supply chain issues was loss of talent. Something like so.
Yeah, that one
Because your
stood out for me. I
suppliers-
was not expecting to see that
No.
as number one. I was expecting really to see cybersecurity or
Yes.
something along those lines. And to see talent management and skills as the main reason was, is that right?
Yes. And I don't know whether it's really reflecting the correct answer to the question, as in your supply chain was affected, right? Or is that response actually, well, we were impacted by loss of talent? Or are the suppliers using the loss of talent as an excuse for problems? I don't know. But let's face it, yes, there was something that is called the Great Resignation, a wave of people that resigned after many, many years with the same company. And I think one reason could be COVID in a positive way, as in, if you were working for a company for X amount of years in a particular city, were you really able to start a job at a company in another different city or different state or province, or let alone in a different country? Well, yes, of course you were, but there were always these limitations. Your spouse needed to find another job as well. You needed to look for schools for your children and stuff like that, right? But now, working from home, now you were not limited any longer to that one city you were living in to find also a place to work. Because, well, your place to work was your living room. And I think, therefore, obviously, a lot of people took that opportunity, using that work from home as a way out to find better opportunities. And yes, therefore, companies were suffering with a lot of talent losses. No question about that. I mean, we all have seen it in our own companies, in other companies. So yes, I can see that also led to issues within the supply chain. And yes, to your point, I'm coming from the information security, cybersecurity, resilience perspective, and I would have expected that to be number one, maybe number two, but number five? Absolutely not. I mean, wow.
But interestingly enough, 5 years from now, what happens?
That is where then it flips, where 55.6% of the respondents say cyber attacks and data breaches will be the major reason for disruptions. And I'm not sure if that is the case. I truly believe that humans have this tendency to misjudge based upon the information they have and the perception they have. Let's face it, right now the perception is cybersecurity is a serious issue, and it will be a disaster going forward. Don't get me wrong, it is a serious issue, and it needs to be addressed. But will it really lead to widespread disasters? I don't know. Maybe, but the human thinking is, of course it will be. And we neglect the things that are called natural disasters like tsunamis and hurricanes and pandemics. Because, well, how often does a pandemic happen, right?
Well, who knows these days? With some of the news you're hearing now, could be one soon. So what other interesting bit of information came out of this year's report?
Honestly, I was a little bit baffled with the next data point, and this was the question was, what was the source of disruption in your supply chain in the past 12 months, and with regard to the tiers? And it came out that 45% of the respondents said, well, the immediate supplier, the tier 1 supplier, was the issue. And then only 24% said, well, tier 2 and even less, 13.8% less, tier 3, tier 4. And I said, really? So why in the world are you then dealing with with the worst suppliers? I mean, why you should really deal then directly with the tier 2 suppliers? Or is it that the organization does not have the view of what is the real cause? And my example would be an entertainment system for a car. So let's say you are a car manufacturer or truck manufacturer, doesn't matter, and you need that entertainment system, entertainment navigation system, right? So of course there's some kind of PCB in it. Of course that PCB is populated with all kinds of components, integrated circuits, capacitors, resistors, yada, yada, yada. Now, let's say one of those resistors is missing, and therefore the PCB cannot fully be assembled. Therefore, the entertainment system cannot be assembled. Therefore, you cannot build your car. You are the car manufacturer, right? Do you really know that the tier 4 supplier for the resistor has an issue? Or do you only know that the entertainment manufacturer doesn't have the necessary components? Well, you only know my part is not available. Well, but you really should now understand what is the source. And I really would like to emphasize, we are not talking about supply resilience or supply issues. We are talking about supply chain issues. And that really means we need to understand the entire chain. We need to understand why is the entertainment system not ready? Well, because it's the capacitor or the resistor, because I don't know, whatever subcomponent is missing there. And that is very imperative really to understand that entire supply chain.
Do you think that's one of the issues maybe some organizations might be having, the difference between supply chain resilience versus supply chain management?
Yes. I truly believe that companies say, well, my contract is with the tier 1, so I only can influence them, I only can query them, and that's all I can do. And I understand that, but I also believe that we really need to understand that there is a little bit more behind that. So I think it really enforces or should lead to a cross-company information sharing. So between two companies sharing more information so that they really understand what is the issue. Another interesting thing I found was organizations say that the impact of COVID is pretty much over, kind of over. Something like, okay, why is it not completely over? Why is it still lingering? I don't have an answer for that, and it really could depend upon what kind of industry you're at. The airline industry, of course, they say, nah, it's still there because our Airbus 380s are still not flying at full capacity. Get that, right? But at the same time, when I'm at the airports, it's like pre-COVID plus something. So I don't know. The other thing that was quite interesting was some organizations said that they were severely impacted by COVID. And they say something like, okay, I understand that restaurants, for example, were severely impacted, but it didn't really address severely positively impacted. Because there are definitely organizations that hugely benefited from COVID. All those companies that are providing furniture for home offices. The other day I was talking to a guy that works for a lighting company, and he said, our business is booming. Everybody recognizes that their light at home is not as good as the light in the office, so they were upgrading their lighting systems at home. So I think, as usual, there are two sides of the coin, and depending upon where you sit, you may have a different opinion whether COVID is over or not. I mean, not from an illness point of view, but from an impact to supply chain issue. And that's just how it is.
You mentioned an interesting point just there. I think maybe some people define COVID as just the illness, and they forget that the impacts an illness creates, and in this case, supply chains. So yeah, some may say COVID is over, but the impacts are still going on, or they may have adjusted to the impacts. So yeah, COVID is still going on, but we adjusted to it. So
Yes.
I think some people have different perspectives of what's meant when we just say the word COVID or pandemic.
Yes. And I think that is another, side effect or side finding in the report. Organization said we are more resilient. Okay, wonderful, excellent. That's exactly what I want to hear. Well, we now have alternative sources. Okay, but you still experience disruptions. Yes, just that's not on. Let's think that through a little bit.
Yeah.
And well, then I discovered a wonderful example, and that's by the way is a real case. A company said, you know what, AWS is fantastic, but just in case something goes wrong, we need to have an alternative. So let's use Azure as well. Excellent. Two different companies, right? Amazon and Microsoft. So what can go wrong? Oh, well, the data is actually housed in the same data center in the same city. Oops. Right? And this is the kind of stuff where you say, okay, just because you have a contract with two different entities doesn't necessarily mean that it is really redundant.
Mm-hmm.
Another example
comes down to defining resilience too.
Yes, another example is, well, we have two ISPs, internet service providers, right? We have, I don't know, let's say Verizon and AT&T. Excellent. But it's still the same cable that is coming in, right? Yes. Oops.
Yes. So the same backhoe is still going to dig up the same cable.
Yeah. So and I think people really need to understand that you may have a contract with a particular company, but the actual service provider might be a third party, and that might be the same third party that is used by other contract partners you have. You need to that's the reason why we really need to understand the tiers, the tier 1, tier 2 relationship.
It kind of gets me thinking that a lot of organizations will just look at the alternative. We'll have A and B, but they won't go behind to find out the details behind it. They'll just say, yes, yeah, we have an alternate provider. Okay, well, that's great, wonderful. But when you start digging out, then you find out the things you just pointed out. They're using the same trunk, the same pipe. Well, then it doesn't matter that you've got two providers. They're going to be impacted the same if a backhoe does some construction or something and digs up the cable.
And by the way, once again, these are not anecdotal stories. I experienced that during an audit where we were looking at some artifacts on a computer system, and all of a sudden the thing freezes. Oh, that's strange. And all of a sudden we hear around us people screaming, yelling, what heck happened? Well, it turns out that indeed a backhoe literally grabbed the cable some 150 yards away.
Yeah, funny enough, I had that happen to me when I worked at a place years ago as well. Same thing occurred. A backhoe.
Classic, right?
Yeah. You mentioned business continuity, and there was something else in the report that surprised me as well. And I just want to see where was it? I know I've got it on here sheet here somewhere. Oh yeah, that 50% of respondents, about 50%, respondents noted they hadn't validated business continuity capabilities with their suppliers. And I thought that was a staggering number considering the conversations that have been going on and the webinars that BCI has put on, and all the specialists that have been out there saying, hey, you've got to include your vendors. And yet almost half the respondents said they don't do it.
Yeah, this is one of those things where I say, guys and gals, it's actually super simple. Why are you not doing it? Why? I mean, I understand that if you are looking for a supplier of a particular part or service, you're first identifying that particular supplier. Yes, great, wonderful. But besides the question, do you have it and at what cost and when, you should also ask, and by the way, just in case something happens, what would be your method to cover me? At the end of the day, I think this is part of due diligence. But I think this thinking in terms of alternative sources and in terms of disaster preparation is not really yet embedded throughout the organization. And that comes back to, it doesn't help us if that supply chain resilience professional is sitting in a cubicle and is just talking to him or herself. No, that conversation needs to go throughout the organization. Whether this is the engineering department designing some specs, or whether this is the procurement department, no, we all need to understand that our suppliers are imperative to our success. And that ultimately means we need to make sure that they are resilient. And, I don't want to mention too often, but nonetheless, there is this thing that is called certification. If your suppliers are, let's say, ISO 22301 certified, there's a very high probability that they have a solid management system in place. I mean, that's the whole idea, right? So in the procurement process, no, you don't need to spend, 5 person days to assess their BCMS, but just simply ask, are you certified? Yes or no? If no, by what time will you be certified? And that only takes what, 45 seconds? So it's not that complicated.
No, I remember when I started a long time ago, we were taught, if you've got key partners, just ask them what, understand what their expectations are of you and what your expectations are of them when either one of you has something. And it was that simple to ask. And I'm surprised that we are now 26 years later, and the same issue is still there. And half the people that responded aren't doing that.
Yes. But Alex, I think it's a question of educating. It's a question of explaining. People will understand the benefits and then use it. Yes, there will be always people that say, I don't need that stuff, and that's fine. But I think the more we talk about it and the more people understand the benefits of relying upon their suppliers with a solid management system behind that, with a solid governance system behind that will help all of us.
Oh, definitely. Is there anything else that surprised you in the supply chain resilience report?
One of the things that comes to my mind was insurances. And there were something like a very small number, just bear with me, 5.6% of respondents said that they are fully covered by insurance for losses, for 100% loss. And that's a very low number when you really think about that. But that said, there were also some 42% that said unsure. So that means that the respondents were not necessarily in that function within their company knowing it. But I would also like to share with you and the audience an anecdotal story that goes like, want to save $100 million? Somewhere. Yeah, sure. Tell me how and why. And why is not easy. It's easy, but how? Well, the story goes, there is this investment company that has about, on a regular basis, 10, 12 companies in their portfolio. So they buy this company. They realize that, relatively speaking, their premiums for business continuity are pretty low compared to the other companies in the portfolio. So they say, how come and why? Well, it turns out that one company they just acquired had indeed a solid business continuity management system in place. No, they were not certified, but that's a different story. But they had at least, business impact analysis, risk assessment, they had countermeasures. They did the right thing. And therefore, the insurance said, well, you are positive risk. You know what are the potential areas. You have even implemented appropriate countermeasures. So therefore, from an insurance perspective, you are a good risk. So therefore, we can reduce the premium. Now, that investment company said, let's use that for the other companies we have in the portfolio as well. And well, it turned out that on average, they were able to save $1 million in premium per company per year. Now, simple math, 10 companies in the portfolio, there's 10 million per year. They keep that company usually, or these companies usually, for about 10 years in their portfolio, and then they sell it off, spin it off. So that's 10 million times 10 is a cool $100 million saved. Now we are talking. Now we are talking, because at the end of the day, what is an insurance premium? Well, it's the price for the unknown. It's the price for the risk. And if you are able to reduce that unknown, therefore the price will go down. Therefore, the insurance will be able to lower the premiums. And in some countries, for example, in the UK, we have now heard that if you don't have a system in place, you are not insurable. Very simple, like that.
Yeah.
And once again, they are not necessarily talking about certification, but they are talking about having a solid system in place. But then I say, coming with my certification background, you have a system in place. That is the bulk of the cost. The certification is just a couple of days from an external party coming in. And that is then a sheet of paper that you can then proudly present to your customers. You can use it to push your suppliers to go there as well. And yes, you can go to your insurance company and say, look, independent party actually already confirmed. It's not just us saying it, it's actually an independent party that said we have a solid management system.
And that helps with sales and getting other people on board down the road as well.
Exactly.
So it comes back with more benefits later on.
Exactly. So this were, from my point of view, the biggest findings. But tell me, what did you see?
Well, we touched on everything that caught my attention, especially the talent and skills loss, the BCP program. Actually, that's the one piece we didn't mention. We did touch on some business continuity stuff, but I did notice there's a piece in there that more and more people aren't asking for evidence of a business continuity plan. They're asking for evidence of a business continuity management program.
Yes.
And I thought, now that's what they should have always been asking.
Yes. Let's face it, the plan is just a small little component. It's really the program that drives it.
Mm-hmm.
And I have audited many companies, and there's always this thing where, during lunchtime or something, okay, guys, we're now off the record. Tell me your most embarrassing story, right? And it is just funny to hear what happens, right? So there's this company that has 2 data centers, fail over, 80 miles apart, great, wonderful, and their recovery time is defined as less than 2 hours. So of course they exercise. Well, literally 26 hours later, they are still not failed over. And everybody is already, totally cranky and exhausted. And then some junior guy says, stupid question. You changed the DNS entry, right? Oops. Well, the problem was that was not in the plan. That was not listed as a step necessary.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, for me, the example. Well, the plans may look fantastic, but when it comes push to shove, people are under stress and they will follow step by step what the plan says, because it's perfect. And then it turns out we forgot something. We forgot step number 3. And other examples were, let's have a quick look at the evacuation plans. Evacuation plans clearly indicated to use particular exit doors, which happen to be not existing any longer because of remodeling of the building. The plan was there, but because there is no program, e.g. the test, the review, the exercises, the plans were never updated. So I think this is just re-emphasizing that people now understand The plans have only limited value. It's really the program that leads to the additional value.
Yeah, I like the fact that people are asking about the program, because I even asked about this just a little while ago with a client, and I said, it's great, you've got this emergency management plan to evacuate your building, and you've got a crisis management plan. I said, how do you notify each other, when something happens in a region and it needs to escalate to the corporate crisis management, and business continuity gets involved and things like that? I said, how do you notify each other? I said, because it looks like these were all built in silos. And really the conversation went dead. Yeah. Oh yeah, we haven't linked. And it gives a perception that we have everything, but they weren't linked.
Yes, indeed.
Well, we've come to the end of the show. Do you have any final thoughts? Anything you would like to convey about the supply chain resilience report?
No, other than once again, thank you, Alex, for giving me the opportunity to talk about the report. And once again, thanking the BCI for getting this report out. And once again, especially Rachel for her fantastic work assembling the report and publishing it. And I'm pretty sure that the audience will find the link under the YouTube video very helpful to download the report from the SGS website. I'm also convinced that there will be a link to my contact information, so feel free to reach out to me at any time. I'm more than happy to help and support any questions you may have. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome, and thanks for joining for a fourth time. I'm sure there will be a fifth. And you're correct. I will. Yep. You are correct. I will put a link to the report in the description underneath the YouTube video. So people go check out the report from SGS and BCI. The BCI Supply Chain Resilience Report 2023. There's a lot of great findings in there, a lot of good information, and we only scratched the surface on a couple of key items. So I urge everyone to take a look at the report. Willy, thanks again. Really enjoyed sharing time with you. And to everybody listening and watching, stay prepared, everybody. If you liked that video, thumbs up. If you didn't like that video, thumbs down. But leave me a message and let me know your thoughts. Of course, don't forget to subscribe. And in the meantime, stay prepared, everybody.